All right. Hello, good morning, good evening, and good night. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic because today we're talking about YMAX compared to the S&P 500. And has YMAX overperformed, outperformed, or even underperformed? And so what I want to talk about is I want to bring up the S&P 500, look at its holdings, and say how does it correlate to YMAX? Then I want to take you through some YMAX holdings, kind of taking it into different sectors. You have kind of a database and a car company, Tesla. You have Apple as well. Whoops, pardon me. We have kind of like an internet company, which is Meta. We also have Coinbase, which touches on cryptocurrencies. Exxon Mobil for gas. So we're going to touch on a bunch of different areas within YMAX to see, is YMAX currently undervalued? Is there still more room to grow? And as well, as I mentioned, compared to the S&P 500, because a lot of the main holdings in the S&P 500 are holdings in YMAX. If you guys aren't aware, YMAX holds all the individual Yieldmax ETFs. And so when we're looking at the S&P 500 major holdings, where you have Nvidia at 6.25%, Microsoft 6.8%, Apple, you get the point at 5%. I have tallied up all of the major holdings in YMAX that are consistent with the S&P 500. And what did I get? Roughly about 32%. Look, it's going to be slightly higher because I didn't check for all of them. I checked for the major ones, but smaller ones, for example, Babo or PLTR, Palantir, where they might make up a fraction of the S&P 500, let's say about 0.037%. I didn't add that in. So this may be closer to 40%. So it looks like 40% of YMAX holdings are correlated with the S&P 500. But of course, there's others which probably aren't in the S&P 500, which are on YMAX, such as gold miners, such as Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin, maybe TSM. But my point is basically what I want to do in this video is I want to go through a lot of different underlying stocks in YMAX. And I want to determine, are they all-time highs? Are they at pretty good values? Is there room for them to continue to appreciate, or are we at a high point in YMAX and do I think we will trend down from here? So that's what we're diving into in this video. And of course, YMAX is a major holding of mine. I hold roughly about 40% of my portfolio in YMAX, roughly $20,000 US. So it's a stock that I am heavily invested in and that I want to, of course, see appreciate. So this is going to be a fun video for myself as well. And if my channel could load here, I could show you guys how many subscribers I'm at, but I don't know if that's going to work or not because we're going crazy. Maybe we'll do that in a bit. But nonetheless, let's get into this video. So what I want to do is I want to look at YMAX versus the S&P 500. And over the past month, S&P 500 up 6.51%. YMAX 3.25%. But you have to remember, YMAX pays a 70% dividend. You divide this by 12, we're looking at roughly about 5 point something percent. So in the past month, YMAX has actually outperformed the S&P 500, which is great because on the upside, we want to outperform the S&P 500. If YMAX will take all the downside of, let's say, the stocks that it holds and potentially might not take all of the upside, we want to make sure we maximize the upside, and in doing that, we want to beat the S&P 500. That would be the best case scenario. There we go. 8,152 subscribers, 286 subscribers in the past 28 days, but that's enough of that. We're talking about YMAX now. So let's jump into some of the prominent holdings in YMAX. So Tesla, for example, sitting at a price point of $356, and let's do it together. What do you think? Is Tesla overvalued, undervalued? I think it's at a pretty fair value at the current moment. Market cap sitting at about $1.2 trillion in between there. I think it's a very fair price for Tesla. If anything, I think it's a high price for Tesla. So in terms of YMAX from Tesla, I think we're likely to see Tesla push the stock price potentially down, but long term, I do think Tesla will be higher in the future, so I am not worried. Apple's sitting at about 200 with highs about $250. I think Apple still has some room to grow. That could push YMAX's share price up further. Nvidia. When we look at the 5-year time frame of Nvidia, we're sitting at all-time highs, but Nvidia is an AI company. It's fairly new. It's of course had very extreme growth, and I think this is going to be a pretty big holding in the future, judging that it is currently, actually, we go up here, the number one weighted holding in the S&P 500. I do think it has more room to grow, and so likely we will see YMAX appreciate with that. And of course, this is solely my own opinion, so everyone's entitled to their own opinions. This is what I think. I hope you guys get some value out of this, but of course, don't take it as stone. I don't have a stone that I'm carving into. This is just my opinions. And as you can see, up 5.32% after hours. Cool. Meta. When we look at the 5-year time frame, it's doing pretty well, sitting at $1.6 trillion. I think Meta is a little bit highly valued. This is not a price point where I would want to buy into Meta at. I do think at a $500 price point, it's still on the high side. But of course, I'm not looking deep into these businesses. I'm only looking at the share price appreciation over time. And one thing I would say about Meta is it has a good trend. And one thing that is working towards it is it is a major holding in the S&P 500. It's 7th in the weighted category for the S&P 500. So, if people are investing into their 401ks or they're buying the overall market or an index, you're likely getting appreciation in Meta from those buys. Now, next on the list, and I did not see this anywhere high up on the list for the S&P 500, which is Coinbase. Coinbase representing, let's say, kind of the crypto market because it represents really crypto transactions. And I think $254 for Coinbase is a fair price. I think it's a little bit more on the higher side. I bought down when Coinbase was at $150. That was the Yieldmax version. If I can post that right here, 261 shares. Oh, if it will let me, it will not. 261 shares. If you guys can see the flicker here at $7.78. The current price is $8.67 after a couple of dividends paid out. So not doing too bad there. But I think it's at a fair price. I do think it has more room to appreciate, potentially up to about maybe 300, 320. So this will push YMAX, in my opinion, further up. When we look at Disney, I think Disney has great room to appreciate. I think it's currently at a fair value. I know there was some troubles with Disney, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know with their business model, but over the past few years, of course, with COVID, that definitely hit hard on the business. But I do think they're set for some kind of breakout, not potentially soon, but I don't know if they're set for a breakout or not, but I do think they're at a pretty decent price point if you were looking to buy. And so I think this will push YMAX up. Now going to Exxon, I think Exxon is sitting okay. I think it's sitting at a fair value. People are maybe hesitant to fully go in and continue to purchase Exxon. I know with the kind of everyone going green, but of course, you still need gas, you still need energy, and we will still need energy. And Exxon continues to be kind of a top runner in the energy space in terms of, let's say, fossil fuels or natural gas is a better term. And so I do think Exxon is going to be around. I think this will push YMAX higher as well. JP Morgan Chase, a pretty big bank in the United States. I think at current price, it's a little bit overvalued. Maybe I'd put this a fair value at $200 or so. But I do think this has the potential to actually bring YMAX down. I think it's a little bit highly priced. So this could potentially bring YMAX's price down, in my opinion. Now we go to XYZ. This is a company or a stock that I own, quote unquote, because I hold the Yieldmax version. I hold quite a bit of it too. Go to my holdings here. You can see I hold 817 shares, roughly about $8,000 US. So quite a bit. And I do think there is great potential for a run up. Of course, been heavily beaten down, and I bought quite a few shares at the low here. And I do believe they still have a great business model. I think they're honestly poised for a breakout. And so that's why I bought quite a bit. So I do think this will push YMAX up. Airbnb. I think Airbnb has never really seen a great breakout, but as well, in terms of their business model, it's kind of difficult to say whether I think the stock's going to go up or not. I think it's a fair value now, but my guess is as good as yours when it comes to saying whether Airbnb is going to take off or it's going to stay the same or recline. So for that, we'll keep it as even. And then last but not least, Palantir. Palantir, from my knowledge, is kind of another player in the AI space. I do think it has potentials to continue to appreciate, such as NVIDIA. Of course, maybe not as big as NVIDIA, but definitely a player in the space. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that will push YMAX up. So overall, I do think YMAX has more room to grow. And as well, I do think the S&P 500 has more room to grow. So I will continue to hold my investment in YMAX. and continue to collect the dividends and hopefully look to pay for more assets using my YMAX distributions. All right, that'll do it for now. We're up to 8,152 subscribers. I hope you guys did enjoy this video and it gave you some kind of clearance on what maybe someone else was thinking about YMAX, because I know there's a lot of talk on YouTube. Oh, is YMAX just decaying? Is YMAX just eroding your principal and paying you out in cash? And I understand the YMAX, the market's a little bit choppy at the moment, but I do think that in time, YMAX should be okay. And it has continued to be a pretty good investment for myself, providing cash flow and relatively holding a base. It's gone down, of course, since I bought it, but I've definitely received more than what I have lost in terms of capital appreciation. So that's good to know. Hopefully we will see a good upside, and hopefully within that, a good upside in YMAX. And judging by the underlying stocks, how only roughly about, we'll say 40% is really correlated to the S&P 500. I think there's a lot of other smaller players which have great potential to move YMAX in the right direction. So if that does sound good, I hope you guys enjoyed my opinion and listening in. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.